Chapter 2. Charlie's Bar. "Rachel, Rachel," yelled Donnie as he slapped his hand on the desk. Rachel opened the sliding door and came in, holding a bunch of paper. It looked like she just grabbed them in a hurry. She didn't have time to put them in a stack form like she normally does. "Yes, sir?" she asked in a quiet voice. She had never heard him yell before. "Where the fuck have you been? And why aren't you at your desk? Some lunatic managed to walk into my office uninvited. Some eccentric man wearing a cowboy outfit. He was talking crazy about buying shit overseas with company money. Is that what's happening in my office these days? People can just walk in?" "I am sorry, Mr. Jackson. I was just getting ready to get all the documents for today's closing." Taken aback by the offensive tone, Rachel said with a defensive one, "Okay, whatever. Just get things ready. Let's start the day." He then picked up his phone and dialed his mother's number. The rings were too long to wait. He kept whispering, come on," until his mother answered. "Hey, doll." "Mom, does the name Mike ring a bell? Some cowboy-looking guy?" he asked with a shaky voice. "Dear, what are you talking about? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Did Dad have a son? A different family or something?" "Dawn, your voice is trembling. I'm worried." "Son, what are you talking about?" "Mom, just answer my question. Does Dad have another son?" "No, of course not. You know your dad. He was always busy with work. He didn't even have time for his own family, let alone start a second one." "Okay, I'm sorry. I just had a stranger here. He said he was going to use the company's money to buy property. I was trying to put two and two together. I mean, nobody should have access to the company's account except the two of us. I'm sorry. I've got to go to court now. I'll talk to you later." "Okay, dear. Focus on work. The Jackson name should stay as it's always been. Just remember, it is your name, and you must look after it. Don't worry about some trivial things. I bet it's just some crazy person sent by someone who hates you. Another lawyer, maybe, or some competing company. Who knows? Brush it off your shoulder and concentrate on today's case. I love you." "I love you, Mom. Talk to you later." He grabbed his briefcase and walked out of the office. The whole team was waiting for him, and they all walked outside. 2 SUVs were waiting with their drivers. The team consisted of 6 lawyers, and 3 got in each car. Donnie felt the phone vibrating. He got it out and saw a text from Rachel saying, "I'm sorry, am I still seeing you tonight?" He started texting back while listening to the whole team discussing aspects of the case. Before he had time to text back, he got a second text from Rachel. "By the way, guess who just walked back in and signed the paper? How did you know?" He had a brief, subtle smile on his face as he texted back, "I just used my body language. She needed a pen to sign. I was fiddling with the pen the whole time we were talking." 15 minutes passed quickly, and both cars pulled up in the courtyard. Donnie quickly started the camera on his phone to make sure nothing had changed since he had last looked at himself in the mirror. The sound of the cameras filled the air as the team got out of the cars. Journalists bombarded them with questions as they walked into the courtroom. Donnie strutted into the courthouse, his eyes scanning the room with a sense of arrogance and entitlement. He was a lawyer, and this was his domain. As he looked around, he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in the familiar surroundings. The rows of benches, the judge's podium, the witness stand, they were all like a second home to him. He strutted down the aisle, his briefcase in hand, nodding and waving dismissively to people as he passed with a quick raise of his hand. He was the top dog in this place, and everyone knew it. As he approached the defense table, he couldn't help but smirk at the sight of his opponent. The other lawyer was young and inexperienced, and Donnie knew that he was going to wipe the floor with him. He took his seat, resting his briefcase on the table in front of him. He was ready for battle, and he knew that he was going to come out on top. With a smug smile, Donnie leaned back in his chair and waited for the proceedings to begin. He was the master of this court, and he was going to show everyone just how good he was. Donnie started his closing statement. He was always in the role, memorizing every single line without a single page in front of him. When he was in the zone, he was in the zone. Nothing was going to distract him from saying the words he needed to say to convince the jury of the evidence to find in favor of his client. He knew when to look at the jurors, when to look away from them, and when to look at his client. Within that head turn, he froze. It's that chilling feeling down his spine again. His heart started to pound, and he couldn't gasp a breath as if he saw a ghost. He caught sight of the cowboy hat. That man was sitting in the back of the courtroom watching his closing argument. Mike looked at him and smiled. "Mr. Jackson, continue, please," the judge said. Yes, Your Honor, I'm sorry." He finally managed to compose himself and finished his statement, but now he lost his flow of thought. He got back to his chair and tried to fight the urge to look back, but failed. He finally turned around, and the cowboy hat was gone. He finished the day with half a brain. This man was starting to get to him. So far, he has not broken any law. All he did was make a friendly visit to his office, although uninvited. That was because Rachel was not at her desk. This is the second time again without breaking any laws. He was just sitting in a courtroom hearing. He made a strong fist. He hated the control this man had over his mind. He's usually the one in control. He felt like punching him the next time this man showed up. If he got in trouble, so be it. He knew the paths and which ones to follow to get out of trouble. Although he had never been the violent type in his entire life, he remembered panicking when he was a kid when his parents argued. He remembered hiding under his bed for hours to avoid the monster. The holidays were the worst time. His father used to drink a lot on social occasions. He used to be happy when people were around. Once they left, the story was different. His mother used to shout and yell at the way he was behaving in front of other people because he wasn't following the classy protocols. What was worse was when his father shouted back. Donnie would hide for hours until his mother found him. "Stay focused," he kept whispering to himself after 8 long hours of jury deliberation. The voice of Emily brought him back to earth. The gods of guilt have spoken. Everybody was standing in court. He could hear parts of the sentences being spoken. Hearing the judge's scattered words, "Have you reached a verdict? The defendant, not guilty." Everybody started hugging. Another big case for the office portfolio and Donnie's big resume. It could only mean good things. Donnie gave everybody the smile that he usually gave after each win. That confident smile, as if he was telling them, "I had this." But even Donnie couldn't resist the happiness of hugging everybody. He could see him again. Amongst all the people standing, that hat was heading towards the door. He was just leaving the courtroom. "I'll be right back." He cut the hug short, pushed Emily away, and ran to the door. He opened the door and looked in both directions twice. The corridor was full of people who had just left the courtroom, but the hat was gone. It was a tradition for the staff to grab a drink after every big win. The whole team went to Charlie's bar. The bar was a desolate, shadowy place with a few scattered chairs and tables dotted throughout the dimly lit room. It was almost always empty, save for a few lonely souls nursing their drinks in the corners. The walls were adorned with peeling wallpaper and fading posters, and the floor was sticky with the remnants of spilled drinks. The air was thick with the stale alcohol, and the only sound was the faint hum of the neon sign outside. Despite its gloomy atmosphere, the bar held a certain allure for the team as they discussed the win and shared funny moments of the trial. For those who found themselves drawn to the bar's lonely charms, it was a place of solace and refuge. a place where they could forget their cares and be left alone with their thoughts. It felt like it was designed for the team. They arrived at various times. Rachel was always the first to arrive due to the proximity of the bar to the firm building. She usually ordered drinks for everybody before they arrived, except Donnie. He liked to order his drink himself. He liked the control even when it came to his drink. After arriving back at the office, they all took their cars and headed to the bar. Donnie was always the last to arrive. He didn't like to wait on others. "Yo, here, I saved your seat," Rachel called out to Donnie, pointing to the stool next to her with the beer bottle she was holding. Donnie sat down and gave everybody his usual classy smile. Richard, the bartender, was busy arranging glasses behind the bar, although there were no people in the bar except for the usual 7 and a couple of people sitting at one of the tables. "Manhattan, rich, easy on the whiskey," Donnie said as he checked his sleeves to make sure there was no crease on them. "Easy on the whiskey, that's new. You love your whiskey," said Rachel as she was looking at her bottle, trying to read the fine print written on them. He quietly replied as he got his mouth close to her ear, "I've had a strange day. Very strange. Hey, who has access to the company's account other than me and my mom?" "Technically, nobody. I can authorize checks if that's what you mean, but your dad only gave you and your mom access to the online account." "Well, that's a relief," as he gave a big sigh. He kept sipping on his drink as he listened to the remarks the team was making about the case. The ironic moment that happened during the trial, bursting into laughs now and then as Richard kept the drinks going. After the third Manhattan Donnie had, his laughs became louder. Then he leaned toward Rachel and whispered, "The man that was in the office, I think he was my brother." She nearly choked on her drink. Some came out of her nose. "You have a brother? You have a brother?" Sally overheard Rachel, and they all turned toward Donnie. "It's not a big deal. This man showed up at my office. He just talked about some strange things and then left. Now that I think about it, he even looked kinda like my father a little bit." "What was your dad like, Donnie?" David asked with a friendly smile on his face. "What?" He followed up with a hand gesture when he noticed everyone was looking at him. "He doesn't like talking about his dad, David," said Rachel, as if she was defending Donnie. "No, it's okay. We've only been working together for a month, so he doesn't know the background. Well, he disappeared when I was 10. On Halloween, he was there, and suddenly, he wasn't. Anyway, enough about your dad. Why didn't you call security?" Rachel asked as she was wiping the drips that came out of her nose. "There was no time to call anybody. I was taken by surprise. I was trying to make sense of what he was saying," he said as his facial expression started to show sadness. He took another sip of his drink. He seemed what?" Rachel asked as she was more intrigued to hear more. "I don't know. I felt like he was in control. He knew what my next step was going to be. It felt like I was paralyzed. Anyway, it's getting late. I better get going. Rich, put all the drinks on my tab." "I'll call your mom and tell her you're with us," Mark said in a serious tone. He was trying to be genuine in his offer. It was well known that Donnie's mother was extremely strict when it came to business and her son. Donnie did not make any comment. He just smiled, turned back, and walked to the door. The alcohol had made him more relaxed, but not too drunk to need a ride. As the bar door closed behind him, he ran back. "Rachel, Mark," he yelled, "come here right now." Without thinking, the whole lot rushed toward him. "That's him! That man I was telling you about, he's there!" As they all rushed out, the street was eerily quiet. The only sound, the soft whisper of the wind as it rustled through the leaves of the trees. The streetlights cast a soft glow on the pavement, but there was no one in sight. It was as if the world had stopped turning, and the only thing that remained was the empty silence of the night. The houses loomed on either side of the street, their windows dark and foreboding. The cars parked along the curb seemed abandoned, as if their owners had vanished into thin air. Everything was still, as if frozen in time, and the only movement was the gentle swaying of the trees in the wind. It was a strange and unsettling feeling, being alone on the silent street. It was as if the world had turned its back on this place, leaving it to fade into obscurity. "Donnie, you need to get some rest. Let me take you home," Rachel said as she walked back to grab her purse. "I swear he was right there," Donnie replied, then paused for a second and turned to Rachel. "I'm fine. I'm going. I'll see you in the morning." He got in his car, but his eyes kept looking in all directions. Why would a random stranger appear in his life all of a sudden? What kind of a game was this? He got his phone out and texted Rachel, "I'll see you in the penthouse. I need you." Within seconds, he got a reply, "I'll be there. Please drive safely. I love you."
If you enjoy hard copies and would like to read this book, the link is provided in the description section below. It is also available as audiobook on Amazon.